When there's a war, countless warriors tend to lose their lives. Some die because they fail to carry on, whereas others die due to their stupidity. A person who judges them in such a critical situation could end up being judged and could even be called a heartless swine. But then, what's right is right. During the war, the warrior died, but he wasn't just any ordinary warrior. This man possessed the greatest strength. Moreover, he was the hero who had received the power to kill the demon god. Yet the hero died. The demon god's spear pierced his heart. The others gathered around him had already used up all their resurrection spells, so they didn't have any other means to revive him. So maybe this is the end. Mikhail blames himself, as it was a blunder on his part to suggest that this dunce head be the leader. Mikhail's teammates ask if he had any last resort, as he's an Archmage of the 9th Circle. He did have various spells, but they were prepared under the assumption that the warrior should still be alive. Since he's dead, they are entirely meaningless now. Everyone seems disheartened, and this is the reason why they wanted him to be the leader from the very beginning. They concluded that trusting that dunce to be the leader was an extremely foolish move. To begin with, the warrior and Mikhail were both chosen to become the hero. However, Mikhail gave up because he believed that he was not worthy of it. Now, after coming this far, he has no choice but to accept that this was his mistake. Mikhail then promises to prepare the strongest magic he has, but he will need some time. One of his teammates, who is well built, agrees to buy him some time. Another one decides to provide cover from the rear. They began their tasks and constantly fought the monsters. There was seriously no end to them. Damn it. That's when the demon god enters. There's been a ton of destruction already, and the other warriors are about to give up. They decide to leave the rest to Mikhail. Meanwhile, another member thanks Mikhail for being with them until now, and he is kind of surprised by her gesture. She surrounds herself with various monsters, and boom. Now it was all up to Mikhail. He was grateful to everyone who bought him time so that he could manage to complete the magic of the 9th Circle. Well, the formation was executed, and now the monsters just had to go to hell. Following this, there's a meteor strike, and the place is on fire. Almost every bit of it seems to be destroyed. Of course, it wasn't as though Mikhail had thought about it, and he didn't know that this would happen. Anyway, changing the situation now with his magic abilities was impossible. Moreover, at this moment, he wasn't even a hero. However, he would be ashamed to meet his comrades again if he had just died in vain. Mikhail never thought that there would be such a day when he would bet everything on this. Even if a person is an Archmage of the 9th Circle, they don't possess the power to rewrite the common sense of this world. Nevertheless, the magic in the 10th Circle is different. If one chooses a different path, they will be able to lay their feet there, and even if it's considered impossible, it could become possible. Mikhail was positive about breaking the circles himself and unleashing everything inside of him. He was in pain as the uncontrolled mana had started to run rampant within his body. He had to bear with it for now, and that's how he would reach it. The magic that only existed in theory has now been put into action. That's rewind. All the time that's passed, all the tragedies, the scarified heroes, and the countless failures that they have committed were all going to be compensated. But damn, he wasn't able to finish it. This magic costs everyone's life, but even that wasn't enough. Mikhail just wished for a miracle so that his magic would succeed at least partially. He promised that he wouldn't make the same goddamn mistake again. Mikhail would never entrust their lives to any unqualified brat. Mikhail is in deep sleep when he hears someone calling him young master, and this is a familiar voice. It was Butler Morden. This guy is extremely worried about his young master, but Mikhail just demanded to know the current date and year. Butler felt a need to take care of his young master, as he thinks he's definitely suffering from a hit on the head. Mikhail finally gets to know that he has been 20 years back in time. This is regression magic with a success rate of a mere 1%. It has even been labeled as an impossible technique. Yes, he did it. Mikhail was currently on the 3rd circle, and this was far too low for the successor of the Walpurgis Marquis family, which is famous for its magic. As for the bandage on his head, after guessing it, Mikhail remembers the embarrassing stuff where he got beaten up after breaking his engagement with Eileen Lindell. He asks Butler about how the ducal family responded, and Butler informs him that there was no response. Mikhail shoos out Butler, and he keeps wondering about his low reputation at the age of 20. He goes back to his past and remembers about that fool of a warrior, Siegfried, who purposely woke up a sleeping wyvern and caused havoc. Mikhail cannot make the same mistake again. Butler is seen having a word with Mikhail's father, who inquires about his son's condition. Butler actually couldn't comprehend much of the situation, but he was sure that Mikhail seemed so full of rage. Mikhail had succeeded in using regression magic and had come back to the past. In order to win against the demon god, he must make sure to prepare thoroughly from this moment forth. Firstly, Mikhail wanted to stabilize the circle flow, as mana usually circulates in a certain direction, which is an important element that affects the nature of the mana. The current correct direction is clockwise. This mana flows in a certain direction and forms a circle. But Mikhail had interpreted this theory differently, and he practiced the free circulation method. This is a crazy training method where he created circulation points all over his body and allowed mana circulation. It wouldn't be strange if his whole body exploded because of this, but he wasn't any normal person. He is the 9th circle archmage, Mikhail Walpurgis. After practicing this method for a while, his circle stabilized, and now Mikhail was able to use mana in the most efficient way. He knew that this interpretation was correct, and it somehow helped him become a 4th circle. Mikhail then practices another form of multicasting, which is an advanced magic that can be used when one reaches a certain level. Usually, multicasting is not possible at a 4th circle, but he managed to do it because he activated the complicated free circulation method. When he was a 9th circle archmage, he would have been able to use several types of magic simultaneously, but now he didn't have enough mana, and he couldn't do it for long. As for now, Mikhail was good to go, and before thinking about what would be the next matter, Mikhail's father barged into the room. He yells at him and asks him if he is aware of his mistakes and whatever he has done. Mikhail chooses to quietly accept everything, and that's when his father becomes exceptionally calm. Mikhail explains, saying that he knows he has ruined the reputation of their families. His father is so mad at him that he could break his legs right now. It is indeed difficult to deal with Asian parents. Mikhail plays along and tries to calm down his father. Mikhail then tells his father that he found something fishy when the dukedom requested an engagement annulment one-sidedly. Of course, this little guy knew some crucial details. Mikhail Walpurgis had changed completely when he was around 23 years old. So basically, the current Mikhail is pretty pathetic in various ways. He is indecisive, the most unmanly man, he is weak, and he doesn't even have his own beliefs. Nothing felt strange when Island loathed the engagement because she was clear that she hated unmanly men. Interestingly, there was a condition when they went into an engagement with the Lindell dukedom that stated that they shouldn't learn any kind of mana training. A successor is very important to a family, and so in order to create a pure successor, mana of different natures mustn't be put into the mix, especially if they are a knight or a mage, which is greatly influenced by their bloodline. So wasn't it obvious that they had deceived the Walpurgis family? Mikhail was sure that Island had already learned a training method to become a knight even before they were engaged. He was serious, but he had just made up the story. Now the question was whether an 8th circle archmage like Mikhail's father could detect this. So yes, they had definitely used an ancient magic tool. Here, Island is busy practicing her sword skills when her father approaches her and asks Island whether Mikhail Walpurgis did anything else after that day. Island was certain that this idiot wouldn't do anything. Moreover, he didn't even show any signs that he knew anything. Island's father worried about things getting complicated if the Marquis Walpurgis came to know about their secret. He was kind of sure that they didn't detect the magic tool. Island's father was proud of his daughter, who is way too talented for her to be used in a political marriage. The father and daughter then discuss another engagement proposal made by Parslope County. Leon Parslope was the only successor of the Parslope County, and he is a sword genius who is also known as the next sword saint. Next up comes a serviceman, and he informs His Excellency that the delegates were here, but it's actually the Walpurgis family. Butler couldn't believe that they were really here, and he was definitely intimidated. But this was Mikhail's only chance to prove himself right. After a long discussion with his father, Mikhail was now responsible for whatever he had said, and if he failed, he would have to give up the family name of Walpurgis. Apart from his father, Butler too seemed extremely worried about the whole matter, and he was talking non-stop. Mikhail reassures him that he doesn't need to worry, as he has already got everything planned. Sir McEwen informs the Duke that they have a visitor from the Walpurgis Marquis. He tells Sir McEwen to inform them that he's busy, and he quickly passes on the message. Sir McEwen apologized to Mikhail, and he was glad that Mikhail went back quietly. No, Mikhail has another plan, and he asks Butler to follow him. Mikhail shamelessly sits beneath a tree and pretends that he is resting. Sir McEwen knows that Count Parslope will be arriving soon, and this fellow is such a pain. He even offers to escort Mikhail on his way back, and then Sir McEwen actually dares to hold Mikhail's hand and tries to pull him away. After receiving a warning accompanied by a death stare, Sir McEwen let go of Mikhail. Mikhail was disgusted by his behavior and asked him right away about it. Sir McEwen quickly kneels down, and Mikhail tells him that if he really wants to chase him out, he is ready to tell him the quickest way to do so. The deal was simple. Mikhail asked him to call Islan outside immediately. The Duke had a bad feeling about it, but then Islan agreed to meet him. Here, Butler is busy giving a sermon to Mikhail because he's acting so brashly. But Mikhail wants Butler to trust him that it has to be today since Count Parslope is coming. The prominent Parslope family would join the Dukes in the near future, and Leon Parslope would be touted as the next sword saint. He was one of the people Mikhail had ties to before his regression, so it would be best to meet him as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Butler questions Mikhail about whether he was partaking in training while the Marquis was unaware. It was indeed a sudden question, but for a moment, Butler had noticed a strength in his young master. Even though he wasn't a mage, he was the Marquis's aide, and he was doubtful about Mikhail if he committed a taboo in order to forcefully raise his rank. Mikhail asks him to check it personally, and after examining his condition, Butler concludes that Mikhail has 4 loops. He had just reached the 4th circle around 2 days ago. Now Butler knows that his young master is talented. Mikhail makes up another crap story and tells Butler that he gained this opportunity after he was kicked. So Butler concludes that Mikhail would certainly reach the 9th circle after getting kicked 5 more times. Lo, that's interesting. Jokes aside, Butler truly cared about Mikhail. After this, they both have a brief discussion about the fall of the Lindell family and its consequences. The Lindell family is indeed a pillar of the empire. Back then, it was the fall of the Lindell ducal family that accelerated the chaos in the empire. Now that he has regressed, he definitely has no plans to just watch as this repeats. Mikhail has got to change the foundation of things. By then, Islan approaches him, and they begin to argue. Islan was sure that things were done between them, but Mikhail wasn't done yet. Islan tells him to just back off and refrain from doing anything useless. Mikhail doesn't want to rush and asks her if there is an important guest coming today. When Islan hesitates to answer, he gets a green flag. Leon Parslope was really not into politics and only worked to hone his sword. Of course, he would not have known about what happened, but there was one thing about which Leon was very concerned: business ethics. If the woman he's going to get engaged with unilaterally demanded her engagement be annulled, this guy, with his supreme sense of justice, would never tolerate it. Mikhail was well aware that breaking the engagement was a mutual agreement, but it had to be dependent on a premise, and things could easily get complicated if it turned into an unfair situation. The ducal family ought to have known that nothing good would come out of it, and that's why they were deliberately trying to avoid Mikhail. He was now going to take advantage of this anxiety. Islan was clear in her statement, saying that there were no problems with the engagement. But when asked if she could make this a formal statement on behalf of the Lindell family, she hesitated. Sir McEwen gets furious as he thinks Mikhail is misbehaving with Islan. Mikhail was surprised by his behavior and demanded to know the ethics of a knight. Islan gets mad and yells at Sir McEwen to let him go. Mikhail asks her to switch locations so that they can discuss things further. Eileen invites him in, and anyway, this wouldn't take long. Islan enters the palace, followed by Sir McEwen, Mikhail, and Butler. Mikhail immediately felt a sense of deja vu. Butler taunts him, saying that he doesn't come here often, but he could at least pretend to agree with this kid, who was literally behaving like an old man. Butler inquires about Mikhail's further plans as he has come here alone, but Mikhail is proud even to mention that he is here with his butler, his most trustworthy ally. Once they reach the living room, Mikhail decides to cut to the chase and get in, as he wants to talk to Islan privately. Mikhail then claims that Islan had lied, saying that she didn't do the mana training when they were engaged. Islan was firm with her statement that she didn't break any kind of promise, and that she's ready to undergo an examination. Oh, so now she thinks that Mikhail is just bluffing and making things up. Well, back then, Mikhail did seem pretty carefree, and he agrees that he was stupid. Mikhail rejects her offer to check on her personally and instead tells her to prove it in front of the people who will judge her more fairly than anyone else. He exclaims that they should prove it in front of the Parslope family. Here, the delegates have already arrived, and Sir Merriam informs his young master that they have arrived. Leon Parslope gets off the carriage and glances at the disgustingly huge palace. Sir Merriam gently reminds Leon to refrain from picking a fight with the Count's people. Of course he wouldn't, he was a gentleman. Well, if he gets the chance, he felt like just once wouldn't hurt though. Huh? This guy? Calm down, Leon was just joking. The Parslope family was making a fuss about moving to the center, but anyway, it was inevitable as the Count is desperate as well. They didn't like being placed on the border, and that was right, since being placed on the border isn't good for a noble family. Direct succession only happens to families that help the emperor. The border families who lose the emperor's interest eventually get cold and disappear. Hence, reaching out when the opportunity was given was necessary. Leon then inquires about Aileen, and he actually knows that she broke off her engagement a few days ago. Now they were about to blame Mikhail, as usual. Sir Miriam tells him that they broke up because that man was the famous Walpurgis's successor. But Leon Parslope was doubtful if there was something suspicious about her. Sir Miriam tells him that Aileen is from the Lindell family, the center of chivalry, as well as Zekmachi Walpurgis. And if there was something really fishy, there was no way Marquis Walpurgis would have stood still. Well, that means that Walpurgis' successor, Mikhail, was indeed in a bad shape, and so she broke up with him. And yes, he was already rumored to be a simpleton. Anyway, good families don't always have equally good heirs. Damn, this hurts. As for Leon, his senses were telling him that it wasn't that simple. Aileen couldn't believe that Mikhail actually asked her to prove herself in front of everyone. This was indeed a great opportunity to wash away the injustice she feels since Count Parslope is coming. Suddenly, Aileen gets nervous, and Mikhail notices it. She then gets mad at him because he has no right to do this, and he's not even here as the Walpurgis representative. Of course he was. Yes, Mikhail did have the Walpurgis emblem, and so he's considered the official representative of the Walpurgis family. Mikhail was well aware that once he shows this emblem, all the responsibility will go to the Walpurgis family if he lies. And from another perspective, Aileen would be regarded as an enemy of the Walpurgis family if she lied. Now that she was hesitating so much, things were getting strange. Aileen tries to cover it up by reminding Mikhail of the importance of the responsibility. He ignores her warnings and asks her to make a decision. That's when Aileen's father enters the living room and tells Aileen not to speak anymore. Mikhail greets Duke Lindell formally. He is the 5th ranked knight of the Empire and one of the 12 sword masters. In addition, he is someone who will lose everything to the demon god. As for Mikhail, he is someone essential to preventing disasters in the future. Duke Lindell seems to be confused by Mikhail's behavior. As compared to before, he seemed different. He asks Mikhail if he has ever seen or received the dragon heart from Marquis Walpurgis. Mikhail tells him that he has never seen it because his father is a bit stingy. Well, Duke Lindell does remember that Aiden was always like this. They get to discuss something in common, and the conversation becomes funny and easy. Mikhail's words somewhat piqued his interest. Now it was time to get down to business, and so Mikhail directly asked the Duke about the engagement between the Walpurgis family and the Lindell family. Duke Lindell clarifies that they broke it off because his level was too low. When he denied the fact that there weren't any other reasons, Mikhail just got straight to the point. He claims that during the time she was engaged to him, Aileen was secretly training her aura. Duke Lindell laughs out loud and refuses to accept it. If his daughter was training her aura, he would have definitely known about it, as he's the 5th strongest in the Empire. Of course, he couldn't have not known. This man was lying. Perhaps he didn't intend to fool Mikhail from the start, and maybe Aileen learned the aura unavoidably and Duke Lindell found out about it later. He must have then weighed the worth of the options. He had to choose between the engagement with a fool and his daughter's sword talent. Everything was crystal clear. Duke Lindell then tries to put Mikhail in a difficult situation by telling him that, though he was upset because they broke up the engagement, that didn't mean he could behave like a crazy kid. Mikhail was sure that this man was certain that there was no way he would have spotted the magic tool that had even fooled Mikhail's father. Moreover, Mikhail could sense his pressurizing aura, and he couldn't even think straight in front of this man's overwhelming presence. Mikhail then tricks Duke Lindell by saying that a while ago, when he was clinging onto Aileen, she made a mistake right here, and he briefly saw something. Anyway, Mikhail was used to it, but he was fine if the Duke really wanted to deny it. Before leaving, Mikhail tells them that he heard about Leon Parslope and that he could easily bump into him on his way back. This little guy was straight away threatening the 5th strongest person in the Empire. Duke Lindell then stops Mikhail, and finally he decides to offer him a deal. He asks Mikhail to call it a tie. Mikhail knew this would happen, as this guy is someone who naturally sprouts bull crap like this. Mikhail was glad that they came to an agreement, and he leaves with the hope of seeing them next time. Here, Aileen was trembling as she thought about the fact that he really noticed, as she was quite sure that he was just bluffing. And now that the Walpurgis have found out that the contract was flawed, they will definitely make them pay an even heftier price. Aileen is almost frustrated with this thought, but her father tells her to calm down. Duke Lindell was certain that Mikhail was a fool who didn't know anything about the world, but he was wrong. He also thought that he was pretty good at reading people, but no, he wasn't, and he found this very interesting. Aileen is ready to take full responsibility since everything was because of her ignorance. But nothing would change even if she did this. This was now a problem between families. Besides, Duke Lindell was the one who allowed it. If he had noticed that his daughter had awakened her aura earlier, something like this would have never happened. So as a parent, he was responsible too. Back then, things were way too unpredictable, and this little island awakened her aura on her own without anyone teaching her. She was indeed a genius of the sword. A proud father wanted to protect his daughter's talent as well. He knew that it was alright if the Walpurgis family asked for a deserving price since they were the ones who broke chivalry. Duke Lindell was certain that they wouldn't ask for anything unreasonable, as Mikhail didn't want the downfall of their family. He was not stupid, like she thought he was. Duke Lindell pats his daughter on the head and tells her to just watch from now on if she doesn't understand, as there will be a lot to learn. Next, Mikhail is seen blocking Leon on his way back. Mikhail formally introduces himself, and Leon tries to examine him. Of course, it doesn't look like he's lying. Leon Parslope then asks Mikhail to explain what is happening, as he was supposed to meet Princess Lindell today. He was now confused. Mikhail clarifies that Leon wasn't wrong, he just forced something. In short, Mikhail just messed around a bit. Leon Parslope gets annoyed as he feels that Mikhail thinks too lowly of him. No, dude, not at all. Leon wondered what kind of bullcrap this is. There was an explosive momentum and power fitting for the title of Sword Saint, and of course, it's over if he scatters it. Mikhail wanted Leon to hear him out, as it's not too late to get angry even after hearing him out. Leon confirms that he's the same Mikhail Walpurgis, who is an idiot. Yes, he's the same idiot. Since it wasn't a total lie, Mikhail didn't deny it. The past was not important, but the present is. Moreover, the invasion of the demon god is approaching. Additionally, he remembered about that crazy man who rose up to be a warrior before transcending. Mikhail was sure that he would never forgive that stupid creature. Meanwhile, Leon notices Mikhail's weird face, and Mikhail looks like he wants to stab someone. Of course, he wanted to stab someone really bad. Mikhail asks Leon to calm down and listen to him, and he quickly agrees. Leon Parslope might look hot-tempered, but he was a pretty cool person. He knew when to be angry and when not to be. He was well versed in the selected anger management disorder. Mikhail knew that this guy was here to set up an engagement with Island, and he wasn't interfering because he was angry or jealous. Island had no value to him anymore. The one that Mikhail is interested in is not Island, but Leon. Ahem. Yes, it is Leon Parslope. Just to be clear, Mikhail definitely likes women. He just wants Leon to become his ally. This guy is not just stupid, he's also super creepy. Leon regrets every damn second. He huffs dreadfully. Mikhail informs him that he is going to die as that wound can't be healed. Ah, yes, he knew it. If only Leon had learned aura training 1 year earlier, he would have killed it first. Leon had taken down the commander of the demon god's third army, Violent Elgium. This was indeed an incredible accomplishment. However, Leon paid the price with his life. Mikhail asked his comrade about his last wish, but now nothing mattered to Leon anymore. He was satisfied that he took this guy down with him. Mikhail assures him that he should leave all his worries behind and just rest. But there was one thing that Leon needed to know before he died, and he asked Mikhail to tell him the truth about whether he couldn't become a warrior. Currently, Leon Parslope has discreetly stopped using honorifics with Mikhail. Well, he was more used to this. They then discuss about the rumor spreading among the Divine Education Bureau about preventing an upcoming disaster. But Leon didn't seem to be worried, as this was not the first time they had tried pulling something like that. And so he didn't care to worry over a prophecy with no impact, even though it was well known. This world hasn't felt the threat of the demon god yet, but there was one prophecy that surfaced before the signals started to appear, and that was the Cassandra's prophecy. Unlike any other prophecy, this one was spread throughout the entire world. However, Leon found it quite amusing when he heard about a demon god in today's world and that a Walpurgis actually believes in nonsense like this. Damn, nobody believed in it. If this goes on, Mikhail is certain that nothing different will happen this time around. Until something happens, people will simply turn a blind eye and ignore the prophecy. But Mikhail wasn't going to be one of those people. He tells Leon that it is not important whether he believes it or not. What is essential is that Mikhail wants Leon to accompany him. Leon urges him to stop speaking nonsense, and he tells Mikhail that he doesn't have any intention to play along with his delusions. That's when he hears Mikhail muttering about Mullier's aura training method. Mikhail reminds Leon that even the genius sword saints can't always grow. In the past, he had heard from Leon himself that it's around time where identity began to form in Leon's swordsmanship, so the information must be accurate. Mikhail continues to provoke Leon, and then he offers to teach him the complete aura training that Mullier left behind, if he accepts his proposal. This statement made Leon anxious, as he was well aware that Mullier only left behind a single book, and even that book is incomplete. And Mikhail Walpurgis is someone who remembers the rest of the content clearly. He wasn't asking for anything big anyway, and he didn't even care if Leon got engaged or not. He only wants one thing, Cassandra's prophecy. Now everything depended on Leon's choice. Leon couldn't understand why Mikhail was risking his life for something like this. But Leon couldn't give up Mullier's aura training method. He failed to comprehend the situation and wondered just who this guy sitting in front of him was. Leon wanted to be clear about the engagement part, and they argued about the involved families. Leon sensed that confidence in Mikhail's voice, as if he were saying that what other people think doesn't matter to him at all. And as for Leon, it sounded good. Leon then tells Mikhail that his first impression of Mikhail was the worst. But now that he thinks about it, he's actually not that bad. Of course, they were meant to be friends. Now Leon Parslope had made his decision, but for the last check, he wanted Mikhail to prove that he knew something about the training method. Mikhail agrees and walks casually into the Lindel's training grounds. He unsheathes his sword, but damn, it's so disgustingly heavy. After enhancing it with magic, it's much better. So now Leon had to look carefully, as Mikhail was about to show him something insane. Mikhail was ready to prove himself, and Leon wondered if he was going to explain the principles of Mullier's aura training method or something. Mikhail explains that Mullier's aura training method was twice as efficient compared to the other training methods. The principles of Mullier's training method didn't differ much from the other methods. However, Mullier's aura imprints a unique engraving on one's body. It also has a limit of around 70 as compared to the other methods, which have a limit of around 40. Mikhail asks Leon to awaken his aura as he needs to check it accurately. He then analyzes Leon's aura, and he learns that it's not very distinct, but it's definitely the engraving of Mullier's aura. Mikhail was surprised at how well Leon had managed to find Mullier's aura training manual. Leon elucidates how lucky he was to get his hands on it because of his father, but after learning and practicing it, he realized that it was barely half complete. It was inevitable, as it was Leon's first time learning a training method. The old Leon had predicted his end, and so he passed down the training method to Mikhail. Mikhail had never thought that things would end up this way, but he was sure that he had to return it back to Leon now. Mikhail was ready to show Leon his moves, and he was told to observe him carefully. Leon couldn't believe his eyes, as it really was Mullier's aura training method. Damn, this was crazy. Despite being a mage, Mikhail managed to prove that he knew the method. Leon was way too confused to process whatever happened. He begged Mikhail to just teach him, and he was ready to accept everything he said earlier. Yes, Mikhail was more than ready, but Leon didn't think that he would teach him so easily. But Mikhail agreed. He asked Leon to come to the Walpurgis family to learn more about the training method. Mikhail promises Leon and leaves. While leaving, Mikhail was stopped by the Duke. So, this sly old man was watching everything. Duke Lindell then sincerely apologizes to him and the Walpurgis family, and as for the compensation, he leaves it to Mikhail to decide. Surprisingly, he didn't know what Mikhail wanted, but he made a big decision anyway. Mikhail notices his calmness and leadership skills. He then apologizes to the Duke for coming here on his own. Mikhail wishes that the marriage proposal goes well, and Duke Lindell calls him dark-hearted as the marriage seems to have gone down the drain already. Mikhail was well aware that he had just offered Leon another option. Leon has a thorough personality, and he must have thought that the engagement broke off because Mikhail was not worthy. But now that he has seen the other side of Mikhail, he would wonder if there was some other reason behind it. Duke Lindell then asks Mikhail if he thinks that they could ever regain the trust of the Walpurgis family. Mikhail knew that the back of his head definitely had to be tingling. Of course, they could regain their trust as long as the Lindell family shows their sincerity with open doors. Now Mikhail asks the Duke his opinion on what he would do if there was a helpful teacher for Island. Duke Lindell feels that Mikhail was telling him that their family's swordsmanship doesn't suit her. This old man was indeed wise, but Mikhail didn't want to point it out, so instead he told the Duke that he wanted to say that there was something else that was best for Island. Duke Lindell thought that this guy was playing tricks and that he really has a dark heart. Damn, this must be a misunderstanding. Mikhail's father already gets the news about Mikhail revealing that wicked Lindell's plan. He was pleased by his son's deeds, but Mikhail thinks that his father is speaking heartlessly. Marquis Walpurgis gets annoyed because there's no father who would trust his son like he does. But his son is a damn braggart. Meanwhile, Duke Lindell sends a message in which he says that he will visit them personally as an apology. He didn't wish that the Walpurgis family would make the news public since it would be critical to a family that lives in chivalry. The Marquis seemed to be quite content to see Duke Lindell in such a fix. He never liked Lindell anyway. He then inquires about their conversation in detail. Mikhail tells his father that the Duke wants to regain the trust of Walpurgis. Since this event went well, Mikhail did have something to ask for. He asks his father to leave all of this matter to him. Mikhail was the one who solved this problem, so he wanted the one to finish it as well. This boy's shoulders have grown now. The Marquis hesitated because it was a matter between families. Mikhail would have sounded a bit greedy, but he wanted to finish his business with his own hands. Marquis Walpurgis knew that Duke Lindell is a wicked old man, and he is known as the symbol of chivalry. But he's also crafty. Moreover, he was worried about his son facing that old man. But it was something he would have to undergo eventually anyway. He finally agrees, and Mikhail promises that he won't let him down. When Mikhail was about to leave, Marquis Walpurgis stopped him and appreciated his good work. This scene is getting emotional. Mikhail bows with respect and leaves. His father kept wondering about what actually happened for Mikhail to change this much. Mikhail was indeed one stupid, immature kid, and maybe time has skipped. Well, Marquis Walpurgis also needed to prepare for the negotiations with the Duke. He did leave it all to his son, but this doesn't mean that he could just sit back and watch Mikhail's performance. This man needs a damn plan. Pre-transcendence, the title of the strongest magic family for them crumbled in an instant, and there was only one reason why a family as strong as an iron castle could crumble. The reason was inner conflict. Mikhail remembers that during the elders' fight for power, how he was used and contributed to the ruination of the family. Mikhail then inquires about Viscount Nostra, who came looking for him a few days ago, and Butler appraises him about his sharp memory, and that he's a well-deserved successor. Viscount Nostra was a mage of the 7th Circle and an important vassal inside the family as well. He was someone who helped the Marquis, and he was competent too. But he had one critical flaw: his lust for power was really strong. Instead of just being an important vassal, he wants to be the center of the family. For now, Mikhail just couldn't leave him alone. In fact, Mikhail was the one who relied on the Viscount the most, and it was he who taught Mikhail how to weave the 3rd circle wildly. Cool, now Butler is mad at him. In the past, Mikhail was quite happy as the circle worked, but now that he looks at it, he's very embarrassed of himself. Mikhail wanted to cut off the weeds that could become a problem for the family. Because he was a friend, his father could never fully cut off Viscount Nostra, and that was the start of the ruination. So Mikhail doesn't have any intention of letting that happen again. He then asks Butler to bring the Viscount to his room, and Mikhail is sure that he will come. After waiting for a while, Viscount Nostra shamelessly comes to meet his young master. He was happy to know that Mikhail had chosen to allow him to be his teacher. Wait, no. Mikhail just wanted to offer him a proposal. Mikhail then tells him that they should have a fight, but without using their respective circles. Before transcending, Mikhail still remembers clearly when the family was brought to ruin. At that time, Viscount Nostra was the reason behind the destruction. Their half-dead family that was barely surviving. And in such a situation where they could barely breathe, the disciples of the demon god appeared. Marquis Walpurgis, the best mage of the family, was bedridden for a long time, whereas the other high-level mages had already left the family. Mikhail knew that there was no way they could fight against them. Viscount Nostra was their last hope, and even Mikhail watched him with a ray of hope. He wondered what kind of magic Viscount Nostra was going to display, but his answer to Mikhail's hopes was extremely terrible. This guy just gave up everything and surrendered. That joke of hope fell in an instant, and the family completely fell apart. And so Mikhail decides to challenge him to a fight without circles. He was going to beat the hell out of this crazy man. Mikhail gave an excuse and told Viscount Nostra that he wasn't sure whether he was worthy of learning magic from him. Moreover, he wasn't even sure if the Viscount had enough skill to teach him either. Viscount Nostra reminds Mikhail of how he taught him the formation of the 3rd circle. Mikhail was firm on his decision, which made Viscount Nostra furious. Mikhail suggested he calm down, but this man kept getting angry because Mikhail didn't believe him. Mikhail did believe him, but he wanted the Viscount to prove his worth, and this was not hard. So then Mikhail asks him to make a bet. Here, they had to fight without circles, which meant magic against magic. Mikhail agreed to follow him as his master if he lost, and if Mikhail wins, Viscount Nostra will become his student. Alright, the Viscount accepts it, and now the challenge is on. In his room, Viscount Nostra was way too happy, as he had just received a freebie through this challenge. It may sound disadvantageous, but knowing the real gap between circles, he was sure that Mikhail would have never made this offer. Well, this was the limit for a beginner. The Viscount was certain that even if Mikhail is of the Walpurgis bloodline, he is just a child who knows not of the world. He was definitely in his own delusion that he was different. Now, Viscount was nearing his goal, and fortunately, this opportunity has come to him. Yes, this is an opportunity that could be written into the history of the magic family of Walpurgis. Viscount Nostra was just waiting for Mikhail, who would soon be craving his teachings that could help him reach the 3rd circle. He He would soon become Mikhail's master in the center of Walpurgis. The next day, as soon as Butler hears about Mikhail's battle against Viscount Nostra, he rushes to meet his young master. Now that the news was already out, Mikhail couldn't go back on his words. Well, that's what he intended. But this butler was busy making a fuss. He was actually worried about Mikhail's future. If he lost, he would be forced to learn from the Viscount. By letting Viscount Nostra teach him, it was next to ultimately giving him all the power. Yes, this could happen. Butler tried to enlighten Mikhail about the wicked man and that he isn't someone that Mikhail should follow as a master. Of course, Mikhail was well aware of this, especially after he had seen him bow down to the demon god in front of everyone. Mikhail could still imagine all this clearly, and this is why he went so far so that the Viscount could take the bait. Mikhail and Butler both knew that Viscount Nostra was close with the Marquis, and that he was comrades with Mikhail's father, so the Marquis would never kick him out first, and that's why Mikhail was taking care of him. With this bet, Mikhail wanted to make sure that Viscount Nostra would not be able to do anything shady. A bet among mages is endless, and magic is completed with language. Here, a bet acted as a promise, and upon breaking it, one would be abandoned by magic itself. Well, that's the exact plan. Moreover, Mikhail guarantees Butler that Viscount Nostra could never defeat him. Mikhail was currently so full of himself because of a condition that he had put forth. The Viscount can only use the circle magic that Mikhail can use. Yes, he was serious about this condition. The very next moment, Butler is seen taking out something. It was his resignation letter, as he wanted Mikhail to stop right here because if he continued, Butler would get sick listening to him. In an instant, Mikhail destroys the letter with fire. Butler found it quite difficult to believe that Mikhail, who recently reached 4 circles, could win against Viscount Nostra, a 7th circle mage. Well, Mikhail tells Butler not to worry, as he wouldn't have called for a battle if there was no way to win. To put it in simple words, the Viscount's 7 circles were wild and forced. Butler still couldn't comprehend the situation, so he attempted to submit his resignation letter again. To achieve high circles, one usually has to learn low circle magic because that's the obvious order, but Viscount Nostra skipped over that very essential and obvious step. And this was way different from the real thing. Mikhail knew that forcing a circle has a bit of a cost, and that's why the Viscount can't be looked at as a normal 7th circle mage. He could just imitate it, and he could probably even use the 7th circle magic. But it's possible if it's just for show. When it's not a show, and when the real magic is thrown back and forth in just a few seconds, his opponent would notice that if he had much more knowledge about magic, this guy, Viscount Nostra, could never win. Here, the Marquis gets the news of the battle and summons his son immediately. Mikhail confirms that he will be fighting the Viscount with magic. Moreover, Mikhail asks Marquis Walpurgis to watch the battle. The Marquis worried about his son, as it had only been a day since he said that he would take care of the Lindell family's business. Now that Mikhail doesn't actually want to hear any advice, it's time for this Asian dad to threaten his kid. But Mikhail was not joking. He knew that his father would think like this for a moment, that he wanted to be the student of the Viscount from the bet. So Mikhail clarifies that he has no intention of losing and that he will win and make Viscount Nostra his student. This Asian dad quickly gets a bat because this crazy dog needs to be beaten. Mikhail tells his father that he is perfectly sane. He then elucidates about Viscount Nostra being a vassal in their family, and he was trying to just put a leash on the Viscount. Mikhail was sure that he would win, or else he wouldn't have started it in the first place. The Marquis asks him about what he would do if he lost, and becoming Viscount Nostra's student was his major problem. Now that the bet was set, even Marquis Walpurgis wanted something out of him. Mikhail knew that his father always wanted to break his legs, so he gladly offered his legs for the peace of the family. Yes, it's a damn promise. According to the plan, the battle was set, and since Mikhail had got his father's permission, the only thing left was to crush the Viscount. Here, the Viscount was sure that he would win, and he was thinking of how efficiently he would make Mikhail submit to him and how to use Mikhail to consume the family. Anyway, this was not even funny, as Viscount Nostra wasn't even a proper mage before he transcended. Mikhail was certain that he would stomp on the Viscount for sure. In the Walpurgis magic practice room, Mikhail observes it, and it's the same as always here. It could resist anything up to 6 circles. There were various tools and barriers, and it was built to resist impact. Basically anything was possible. And so Mikhail began his practice with a magic missile. This was the 1 circle magic missile. The reason this magic is ranked as 1 circle is that there were few calculations needed to make it. But because many mages could do it, it was the most basic magic and it was limitless. With experience, a mage could turn it into a not so simple missile. It could be turned into at least a level 5 circle of difficulty. A small manipulation like this and it could be used in circles as well. It also shows the difference between high and low circle mages. Mikhail notices that his control doesn't differ much from before, as his brain is still the same. Now that the battle is in 1 hour, so Mikhail gets ready to test some other magic. Before transcending, everything that Nostra had taught Mikhail was all wild and forced magic, while circles were quickly stackable. Once one learned them, one could never pass the 8th circle. Mikhail was somehow grateful that he had to forget everything and restart. If this guy didn't have 1 in 1,000 talents, he wouldn't have been able to restart. After some intense practice, Mikhail wonders if the time to battle has finally come. Here, Viscount Nostra is busy, as he's simply overthinking. In his imagination, he tells Aiden that this is his style. He acted as if he didn't know anything, but he was certain that, as Mikhail's master, he would become one of the pillars of Walpurgis. He falls off and coughs hard. The very next moment, Aiden came to him in reality. Yes, the Marquis Walpurgis was here, and he began to inquire about the bet. Nostra tells his friend that he thinks that Mikhail needs a proper guide anyway, so he doesn't want to discourage the kid. The Marquis tells Viscount Nostra that he saved him from many dangers and has supported him ever since they were young. Because he remembers Nostra's good deeds, that is why the Marquis is watching him without interfering right now. Even Viscount Nostra was glad that his master has always looked after his convenience, and this chance was also given to him. And now that the Viscount was ready, Marquis Walpurgis didn't need to say anything else before the battle. Next, the Marquis enters the battlefield and asks Mikhail if he's ready. He did as his son wanted, and he was the only viewer of the battle. No one else would know the result of this battle. However, the price of this battle won't be light since neither side can back out. The Viscount was satisfied, as the young master has chosen what is to be done and the heir to the Walpurgis family doesn't speak lightly. Alright then, it was now time for some real action. Marquis Walpurgis seals Viscount Nostra's circle temporarily, so until the battle ends, he can't use magic above 4 circles. Viscount Nostra agrees to the deal and asks if the young master is ready. Yes, of course, he was ready. Since everything was set, Viscount Nostra decides to begin the battle, and he wishes to teach Mikhail a lesson. He attacks him with bluff magic, and he decides to slow Mikhail down and quickly take the win. Mikhail creates confusion and displays his talent. Viscount Nostra is thrown away, and he wonders how Mikhail managed to do the most difficult magic among the 4 circle spells. Of course, he didn't need to know about this, so the next attack by the Viscount was a fireball, followed by a wind cutter and then an earth break. Now this guy clearly wanted to teach Mikhail that the gap between circles isn't a simple type of magic. Oh, Mikhail didn't know anything about it. Mikhail then uses the mana barrier to protect himself. Logically, he found that the Viscount's words weren't wrong, since it's obvious that a new 4-circle mage like Mikhail wouldn't be able to block those spells. But unlike swordsmanship, magic is an unfair study. Nevertheless, no matter how much one tries, one cannot win over the physical and aura gaps in swordsmanship, but magic was different. If one has a brain that can calculate, one could make the impossible possible. So next, Mikhail uses the multicasting method and creates a havoc. Viscount Nostra just stood there observing those spells, and he just muttered that they actually surpass 1-circle magic. He failed to understand how a 4th-circle mage could use such complicated spells. On the other hand, Mikhail was determined to show Viscount Nostra that this was magic. So that is it for this video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. So if you like the video, then hit that like button and leave a comment for the next part. Most important, subscribe and press the bell icon for notification. I will meet you in the new video. Till then, bye.